You stand in the flickering torchlight of a stone chamber beneath the Temple of Solomon, sweat streaming down your face as you repeat the oath that will bind your soul forever. I promise to God and to Our Lady to dedicate my life and strength to the defense of the mysteries of the faith. But the real mystery isn't what you're swearing to protect. It's what you've just discovered about your order's true purpose, and the terrible realization that the enemies you've been fighting in the Holy Land are not the real threat to Christendom. Hey everyone, tonight we journey into one of history's most legendary and secretive military orders, not to perpetuate myths about treasure and conspiracies, but to understand what life was truly like when you traded your worldly existence for a sword, a vow, and a white mantle marked with a red cross. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe light a candle for that authentic medieval atmosphere, and let's ease into tonight's journey together through a life of devotion, warfare, and secrets that changed the course of history. You are born into nobility in the early 12th century, in a world where your birth determines not just your privilege, but your obligations. The blood in your veins carries the weight of ancestral duties, the expectation of military service, and the constant pressure to prove your worth through deeds that will echo through generations. Your father's castle overlooks lands that stretch to the horizon, worked by peasants whose lives you will never truly understand, defended by knights whose loyalty you must earn. Childhood in your world is brief and purposeful. By age 7, you are sent to another noble household to begin your education as a page, learning to serve at table, care for weapons and armor, and absorb the complex codes of chivalry that govern knightly behavior. The great hall where you serve becomes your classroom, where you observe the intricate dance of feudal politics, the careful balance of honor and ambition, and the ever-present reality that violence lurks beneath the veneer of courtly refinement. Your training intensifies as you become a squire at 14, assigned to a knight who becomes your mentor in the arts of war and governance. You learn to handle sword and lance, to manage a destrier worth more than a village, and to understand the tactical complexities that separate professional warriors from mere fighters. But more importantly, you learn that knighthood is not just about individual prowess, but about serving something larger than yourself. The world around you pulses with religious fervor and martial ambition. Stories filter back from the Holy Land of Christian knights battling infidel armies, of sacred sites liberated and lost, of opportunities for both salvation and earthly glory. The First Crusade has already demonstrated that war can be both profitable and holy, that violence in service of God carries rewards both temporal and eternal. Your family's expectations weigh heavily on your shoulders. As a younger son, you will inherit little land but much obligation. Your elder brother will receive the family estates, leaving you to seek your fortune through military service, marriage, or the church. The traditional paths offer limited satisfaction. Mercenary service lacks honor, marriage requires substantial dowry, and conventional religious life seems too passive for your warrior's temperament. The education you receive extends beyond martial skills to include reading, writing, and the rudiments of theology that a Christian knight requires. You learn Latin from the castle chaplain, study the lives of military saints like Saint Maurice and Saint George, and absorb the complex theological justifications for Christian warfare. The concept of holy war becomes not just acceptable, but necessary, a divine calling that transforms murder into martyrdom. Court life exposes you to the sophisticated culture that nobility cultivates to distinguish itself from the common masses. You learn to appreciate music and poetry, to engage in complex conversations about theology and philosophy, and to navigate the subtle hierarchies that govern noble society. Yet beneath this refinement lies the constant awareness that your primary value derives from your willingness and ability to kill for your beliefs. The stories that captivate your imagination are tales of knights who found perfect service in defense of Christendom, Roland dying at Roncesvalles, Charlemagne's paladins fighting for faith and empire, Arthur's knights seeking the Holy Grail. These narratives provide templates for heroic action, while reinforcing the idea that true nobility requires sacrifice for something greater than personal advancement. News arrives of the foundation of a new military order in Jerusalem, brothers who combine monastic vows with knightly service, creating a new model of Christian warfare. The Knights of the Temple of Solomon, as they are known, offer something unprecedented, a way to serve God through violence that is not just sanctioned but sanctified. Here is a path that reconciles your warrior training with your spiritual longings. The recruiting efforts of the Templars reach your region through charismatic preachers who paint vivid pictures of the holy war being waged in distant lands. They speak of Muslim armies threatening Christian pilgrims, of sacred sites defiled by infidel presence, of opportunities to win eternal salvation through temporal service. But they also speak of practical matters, the Order's growing wealth, its international influence, its protection of members' families and properties. Your father views the Templars with mixed feelings. He recognizes the Order's growing prestige and the advantages of having a son in such an influential organization, but he also understands that joining the Templars means losing you forever, that your vows will supersede all family obligations and transform you into something both more and less than the son he raised. The decision to join represents a death as final as any battlefield casualty. The process of joining begins with careful evaluation of your suitability. Templar recruiters assess not just your martial skills but your mental stability, your financial resources, and your family connections. They seek men who can contribute to the Order's mission while bringing valuable assets, land, money, political influence, or specialized knowledge. Your noble birth provides advantages, but it also creates suspicions about your motives and commitment. Religious preparation for joining the Order involves intensive spiritual counseling designed to ensure your understanding of the vows you will take. You spend weeks in prayer and fasting, examining your conscience and preparing your soul for a transformation more complete than any mere change of allegiance. The chaplains who guide this process are themselves Templars, men who understand both the spiritual and practical demands of your intended life. The decision to join ultimately comes from within, from a conviction that conventional knighthood offers insufficient meaning and that ordinary religious life lacks the active service you crave. The Templars promise something unprecedented, a way to fight that is also worship, a brotherhood that transcends national boundaries, and a mission that serves the highest conceivable purpose. You choose the white mantle not for adventure or advancement, but because it represents a calling you cannot ignore. Your family's reaction to your decision reveals the complex emotions surrounding Templar recruitment. Your mother grieves as if you were already dead, understanding that joining the Order severs family bonds permanently. Your father expresses pride mixed with loss, recognizing the honor but mourning the end of his family line through you. Your siblings react with combinations of admiration, envy, and relief that they are free from such a demanding calling. The final preparations for departure involve settling your worldly affairs in ways that reflect your new spiritual state. You distribute personal possessions to family and servants, arrange for prayers to be said for your soul, and take formal leave of the world you are abandoning. These rituals serve practical purposes, but also psychological ones, helping you accept the finality of your choice and preparing you for rebirth as a new type of being. Your journey to the Templar commandery feels like a pilgrimage in reverse, each mile taking you further from the familiar world of court and castle toward an unknown life, governed by rules you have yet to fully comprehend. The landscape changes subtly as you travel, from the managed estates of nobility to the more austere regions where the military orders maintain their training facilities and administrative centers. The commandery itself presents a striking contrast to the castles of your youth, built for function rather than display. Its stone walls enclose a world designed around spiritual discipline and military preparation. There are no tapestries depicting heroic hunts, no comfortable chambers furnished for leisure, no great halls designed to impress visitors. Every space serves the dual purpose of monastic life and warrior training. Your reception is formal and slightly intimidating, conducted by brothers whose bearing reflects years of discipline and purpose. They examine your credentials, verify your noble birth, and assess your physical condition with the thoroughness of horse traders evaluating valuable stock. You are measured for the white mantle that will become your uniform, but you must earn the right to wear it through successful completion of your novitiate. The cell assigned to you contains only the most basic furnishings: a narrow bed, a wooden cross, a small table, and storage for the few personal items you are permitted to retain. The austerity is deliberate, designed to detach you from worldly comfort and focus your attention on spiritual development. Luxury becomes not just unnecessary, but actively harmful to your new identity. Your introduction to Templar life begins with the rule, the detailed code of conduct that governs every aspect of existence within the order, written by Saint Bernard of Clairvaux and approved by the Pope. The rule transforms knightly vows of loyalty into religious obligations of obedience, poverty, and chastity that supersede all previous commitments. Learning the rule requires memorization, not just of specific regulations, but of the spiritual principles that underlie them. The daily schedule imposes a rhythm entirely different from the irregular patterns of noble life. You wake before dawn for matins, the first of the canonical hours that punctuate each day with communal prayer. The structured progression through lauds, prime, terce, sex, none, vespers and compline creates a framework that integrates spiritual observance with practical activities in ways you never experienced in secular life. Meals in the refectory follow monastic traditions modified for the order's military purpose. You sit on wooden benches at long tables listening to readings from scripture or military treatises, while consuming simple but adequate food. Conversation is limited and purposeful, focused on matters relating to your training or the order's mission. The contrast with the elaborate feasts of your youth reinforces your transformation from nobleman to monk. Your sleeping arrangements reflect the communal nature of Templar life, while acknowledging the practical requirements of professional soldiers. Dormitories house multiple brothers in conditions that promote fellowship, while maintaining individual privacy. You learn to sleep lightly, always ready for emergency calls to arms that can come at any hour of day or night. Physical training intensifies aspects of knightly education while introducing new elements specific to Templar warfare. You practice individual combat skills, but also learn to fight as part of disciplined units that execute complex maneuvers with precision impossible for conventional feudal armies. The integration of monastic discipline with military training creates capabilities that exceed anything you experienced as a secular knight. Weapon training goes beyond the sword and lance skills of traditional knighthood to include specialized techniques developed through decades of warfare in the Holy Land. You learn to fight on foot as well as mounted, to use crossbows and other projectile weapons forbidden to ordinary knights, and to coordinate with infantry units in ways that maximize combined effectiveness. The Templars fight differently because they serve different purposes than feudal armies. Intellectual education continues throughout your novitiate, but with a focus that differs from your noble upbringing. You study military engineering, siege warfare, and the practical aspects of maintaining armies in hostile territories. Languages become essential tools: Latin for communication within the international order, Arabic for intelligence work, and the various European tongues needed for diplomatic activities. Religious instruction deepens your understanding of the theological foundations for Christian warfare, while providing practical guidance for maintaining spiritual discipline under the stresses of military life. Templar chaplains are themselves experienced warriors who understand the psychological challenges of combining monastic vows with necessary violence. They teach you to pray before battle and confess after it, to maintain spiritual purity while engaging in physical brutality. The brotherhood you enter transcends the social distinctions of your previous life. Former nobles serve alongside former peasants, united by common vows and shared dangers. Birth provides no advantages within the order. Advancement depends entirely on merit, dedication, and survival. You learn to take orders from men you would have commanded in your previous existence, and to command men whose noble blood might exceed your own. Your new identity develops gradually, through repeated rituals and daily practices that separate Templar life from worldly existence. The white mantle you eventually earn symbolizes not just membership, but transformation into something unprecedented in Christian history. A warrior whose violence serves God directly, rather than through secular intermediaries. The red cross emblazoned on your chest marks you as belonging to Christ first, and to no earthly lord. Psychological adaptation to Templar life requires abandoning the individualism prized in noble culture for a collective identity that subordinates personal desires to communal goals. You learn to find satisfaction in the success of your brothers rather than in personal achievement, to value the order's mission above your own advancement, and to accept that your individual life has meaning only as part of a larger purpose. The vows you eventually take represent the culmination of your transformation from nobleman to Templar. Poverty means renouncing not just personal wealth, but the pursuit of wealth for its own sake. Chastity requires abandoning not just marriage, but the entire complex of family relationships that defined your previous identity. Obedience demands submission to legitimate authority, even when orders conflict with personal judgment or inclination. Your ceremony of investiture marks your death to the world and rebirth as a new type of being. In the presence of your new brothers, you swear oaths that bind your soul as completely as any marriage vows, while dedicating your life to purposes that transcend individual existence. The white mantle placed on your shoulders transforms you from a man who happens to be a knight into a knight who has become the instrument of divine will. Your first sight of the Holy Land comes from the deck of a transport ship after weeks of dangerous sea voyage that tested both your physical endurance and your spiritual resolve. The coastline rising from the Mediterranean appears both familiar and utterly alien. Familiar because Christian armies have held these ports for decades. Alien because you are looking at the landscape where Christ himself walked, and where your order fights to maintain Christian dominion over sacred sites. Acre, your port of arrival, bustles with an international community that reflects the complexity of Crusader society. European merchants conduct business with local traders. Pilgrims from various nations prepare for journeys to Jerusalem, and military orders maintain their regional headquarters, while coordinating the defense of territories that exist in constant danger of Muslim reconquest. The city serves as your introduction to a world where Christian and Islamic civilizations meet in both violent conflict and necessary cooperation. Your assignment to a particular commandery depends on your skills, the order's current needs, and the strategic situation across the various fronts where Templars serve. You might find yourself at Chastelblanc in the northern mountains, at Gaza guarding the southern approaches to Jerusalem, or at one of the numerous smaller fortifications that form the defensive network protecting Christian territories. Each posting offers different challenges and opportunities for service. The castle that becomes your new home represents centuries of military engineering adapted to local conditions and strategic requirements, built by Crusader engineers with knowledge gained through previous campaigns. It incorporates both European castle-building traditions and innovations developed specifically for warfare against Muslim armies. The result is a fortress that could withstand siege while serving as a base for offensive operations. Daily life in a frontier commandery combines monastic routine with military alertness in ways that create unique rhythms unknown in Europe. Morning prayers might be interrupted by reports of Muslim raiding parties. Afternoon weapon training could shift suddenly to actual combat. And evening contemplation occurs against the background of campfires from enemy armies visible in the distance. You learn to transition instantly between spiritual and military activities as circumstances demand. Your responsibilities within the commandery depend on your rank, experience, and specialized skills. New arrivals typically serve in support roles, maintaining equipment, caring for horses, and learning from more experienced brothers. Advancement comes through demonstrated competence in battle, administrative ability, or specialized knowledge that serves the order's needs. The hierarchy reflects practical considerations rather than birth or political connections. Interaction with the local population introduces you to the complex ethnic and religious diversity that characterizes the Holy Land. Christian Arabs, Eastern Orthodox believers, various heretical sects, Jews and Muslims all live within territories nominally ruled by Christian Crusader states. Maintaining security while governing this diversity requires diplomatic skills and cultural understanding that exceed anything demanded of knights in Europe. Intelligence gathering becomes a crucial skill as you learn to assess Muslim military capabilities, political divisions, and strategic intentions. The Templars maintain extensive networks of informants, traders, and diplomatic contacts that provide information essential for survival in a hostile environment. You must learn to evaluate sources, interpret rumors, and distinguish reliable intelligence from deliberate deception designed to mislead Christian forces. Combat in the Holy Land differs substantially from European warfare in ways that require adaptation of traditional knightly tactics. Muslim armies rely heavily on mounted archers who attack from distance before withdrawing, avoiding the close combat where European heavy cavalry holds advantages. You learn to fight defensively, to endure arrow storms while seeking opportunities for decisive charges, and to coordinate with infantry and crossbow units in combined operations. Siege warfare represents a different category of military challenge, requiring specialized engineering skills and psychological endurance. Both Christian and Muslim forces build sophisticated fortifications that can withstand conventional assault, leading to prolonged blockades that test logistics, morale, and strategic patience. You might spend months camped outside enemy strongholds, facing disease, supply shortages, and constant harassment while maintaining discipline and effectiveness. Your education in Middle Eastern culture develops through necessity rather than academic interest. Learning Arabic proves essential for interrogating prisoners, negotiating with local officials, and conducting trade relationships that sustain your military operations. Understanding Islamic military traditions helps you anticipate enemy tactics while respecting the capabilities of opponents who combine religious motivation with professional competence. Religious experiences in the Holy Land carry emotional weight impossible to achieve in European settings. Praying in churches built on sites where biblical events occurred, walking streets where Christ himself traveled, and defending locations that define Christian identity create spiritual intensity that sustains your commitment through the hardships and dangers of frontier military life. The Holy Land becomes not just your posting but your calling. Diplomatic activities form an essential part of Templar responsibilities as the Order negotiates truces, prisoner exchanges, and trade agreements with Muslim authorities. These negotiations require understanding of Islamic culture, negotiating protocols, and the complex political relationships that exist between various Muslim rulers who may cooperate with Christians against common enemies or pursue independent policies based on local interests. The multicultural environment of Crusader society exposes you to knowledge, techniques, and perspectives unavailable in Europe. Muslim medical practices, agricultural methods, architectural innovations, and military technologies offer improvements over European equivalents in many areas. The Templars actively adopt useful innovations while maintaining their Christian identity and mission. Relationships with other military orders create both cooperation and rivalry, as Templars, Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights, and various smaller orders coordinate defense while competing for resources, influence, and prestige. Understanding these relationships becomes essential for effective military operations while navigating the complex politics of Crusader society. Your correspondence with family and friends in Europe becomes increasingly difficult as your experiences in the Holy Land diverge from anything they can understand. The intensity of religious feeling, the constant proximity of death, and the complex cultural environment you navigate daily cannot be adequately communicated to people whose lives remain bounded by European experience. You find yourself becoming foreign to your own past. Seasonal campaigning patterns develop according to weather, agricultural cycles, and the strategic priorities of both Christian and Muslim forces. Spring brings renewed military activity after winter's pause. Summer intensifies operations despite brutal heat. Autumn provides opportunities for major campaigns before winter's approach. And winter offers time for rest, resupply, and planning future operations. The psychological impact of frontier life manifests in various ways among different brothers. Some thrive on the constant danger and clear sense of purpose. Others struggle with homesickness and cultural isolation, while many develop the fatalistic acceptance that characterizes soldiers who live daily with mortality. The Order provides spiritual support, while expecting emotional resilience from men who chose this demanding life. Your understanding of the Templar mission evolves through direct experience of the challenges facing Christian territories in the Holy Land. What appeared from European perspective as a straightforward matter of defending Christian pilgrims reveals itself as a complex struggle involving politics, economics, culture, and religion in proportions that require constant adjustment of tactics, strategies, and goals. Economic activities support military operations through agricultural estates, trade relationships, and financial services that generate revenue for maintaining armies and fortifications. You learn that successful crusading requires not just martial prowess but also administrative competence, business acumen, and the ability to generate sustainable income in challenging environments. Your advancement within the Templar hierarchy brings access to information and responsibilities that were hidden during your initial years of service. What you initially understood as a straightforward military and religious mission reveals layers of complexity that transform your understanding of both the Order's purposes and the broader struggle for control of the Holy Land. Knowledge becomes both privilege and burden as you learn secrets that must be protected at the cost of life itself. The initiation into higher ranks within the Order occurs through ceremonies that differ dramatically from your initial investiture as a simple brother knight. Conducted in secrecy with only the most trusted members present, these rituals reveal aspects of Templar doctrine and purpose that novices cannot comprehend. You swear additional oaths that bind you to silence regarding matters that could destroy the Order if revealed to outside authorities. Financial operations form a crucial component of Templar activities that extends far beyond simple donations from pious benefactors. The order develops sophisticated banking systems that facilitate international commerce, political loans that influence royal policies, and investment strategies that generate wealth needed to sustain military operations. Your education in these matters reveals the extent to which religious warfare depends on economic foundations. Diplomatic activities involve relationships with Muslim authorities that would appear scandalous to ordinary Christians, but prove essential for maintaining Templar effectiveness in the Holy Land. Negotiating prisoner exchanges, arranging temporary truces, and conducting intelligence operations require ongoing communication with enemies of Christendom. These relationships demand discretion and sophisticated understanding of Islamic culture and politics. Archaeological and scholarly pursuits conducted by the Order in Jerusalem and other sacred sites reveal discoveries that challenge conventional understanding of Christian history and doctrine. Ancient texts, religious artifacts, and architectural evidence suggest complexities in early Christian development that contradict official church teachings. This knowledge creates tensions between loyalty to the Order and obedience to papal authority. Military technologies and tactics developed through exposure to Islamic innovations provide advantages that must be carefully concealed from other Christian military orders and secular authorities. Adoption of Muslim architectural techniques, weapons design, and strategic concepts could be interpreted as dangerous sympathy with enemies of the faith. The Order must balance military effectiveness with religious orthodoxy. Your access to Templar archives reveals the Order's true scope and influence throughout Europe and the Middle East. Financial records, diplomatic correspondence, and intelligence reports demonstrate an organization whose power rivals that of kingdoms while remaining theoretically subject to papal authority. Understanding this scope brings awareness of the dangers facing an organization that grows too powerful for its own security. Theological studies conducted within the Order explore questions and possibilities that push boundaries of acceptable Christian doctrine. Contacts with Eastern Orthodox scholars, Muslim philosophers, and Jewish mystics provide intellectual perspectives unavailable through conventional European religious education. These studies enrich understanding while creating potential charges of heresy from suspicious outside observers. Administrative responsibilities at higher levels require managing resources, personnel, and operations across multiple territories with different legal systems, cultural contexts, and strategic requirements. You learn to coordinate activities in Europe, the Holy Land, and Iberia while maintaining security and secrecy necessary for effective operations. The complexity rivals that of royal administration while requiring religious discipline. Relationships with royal courts throughout Europe involve Templar participation in political activities that extend far beyond military service in the Holy Land, providing financial services to kings, mediating diplomatic disputes, and offering strategic advice, make the Order a crucial player in European politics, while creating dependencies and resentments that threaten long-term security. Intelligence networks maintained by the Order extend throughout both Christian and Muslim territories, providing information essential for military operations while creating capabilities that secular authorities find threatening. Your training in intelligence work includes encryption techniques, surveillance methods, and analysis skills that rival those of royal spy services while serving religious rather than national purposes. Scientific and technical knowledge accumulated through contact with Islamic scholars and Byzantine experts provides capabilities in engineering, medicine, and mathematics that exceed European standards. This knowledge serves practical military purposes, while creating intellectual opportunities that must be carefully concealed from religious authorities suspicious of foreign learning. The Order's relationship with other secret societies and mystical traditions creates networks of influence and knowledge that operate outside conventional religious and political hierarchies. These relationships provide resources and allies while creating suspicions about Templar orthodoxy and loyalty. Navigating these connections requires discretion and sophisticated understanding of esoteric traditions. Your education in esoteric Christian traditions reveals aspects of religious history and doctrine that differ substantially from popular understanding. Gnostic texts, mystical practices, and alternative interpretations of Scripture provide spiritual resources while creating potential conflicts with orthodox religious authority. These traditions enrich personal spiritual development while requiring absolute secrecy. Economic activities extend to ventures that would appear unseemly for a religious organization but prove essential for generating resources needed to sustain military operations. Trading partnerships with Muslim merchants, loans to secular authorities, and investments in commercial ventures create wealth while challenging conventional expectations about religious poverty and withdrawal from worldly concerns. Military planning at strategic levels requires understanding of political and economic factors that influence warfare throughout Europe and the Middle East. Your education includes analysis of royal succession disputes, trade route security, and demographic changes that affect the balance of power between Christian and Muslim forces. This knowledge enables more effective military planning while creating awareness of forces beyond direct Templar control. Technological innovations developed within the order include architectural advances, weapons improvements, and logistical innovations that provide military advantages while demonstrating capabilities that rival those of major kingdoms. Maintaining secrecy about these innovations protects competitive advantages while preventing outside authorities from fully understanding Templar capabilities and resources. Your deepest education reveals the Order's understanding of its historical mission as extending beyond simple defense of Christian pilgrims to encompass broader responsibilities for preserving knowledge, maintaining balance between competing forces, and preparing for future challenges that require capabilities transcending conventional military and religious organizations. Your typical day begins in darkness, hours before dawn, when the bell calls you from sleep that came too late after evening duties extended past compline. The stone walls of your cell provide no comfort against the cold, and you dress quickly in the dark, your movements automatic after years of practice. The white mantle settles across your shoulders like familiar weight, its red cross a reminder of the blood you are prepared to shed, and the blood that has been shed for your salvation. Morning prayers in the chapel occur in near silence, with 24 of your brothers kneeling on cold stone while mumbling familiar Latin phrases that provide structure to the beginning of another day devoted to service. The chaplain's voice echoes against vaulted ceilings as he leads you through matins and lards, but your mind often wanders to practical concerns: the supply convoy expected from Acre, reports of Muslim scouts near the southern pass, the condition of your destrier's left foreleg that seemed tender yesterday. The refectory serves simple but adequate food that reflects both monastic tradition and military necessity. Dark bread, watered wine, and whatever vegetables the castle's gardens provide sustain bodies that must be ready for combat, while souls focus on eternal rather than temporal satisfactions. Meals occur in silence except for readings from scripture or military treatises, creating contemplative atmosphere while conveying practical information about tactics, strategy, or spiritual discipline. Your assigned duties rotate according to the commandery's needs and your particular skills. You might spend morning hours training newer brothers in sword work, afternoon hours maintaining weapons and armor, and evening hours standing watch on the castle walls. Each task requires complete attention and professional competence, because mistakes in any area can compromise the entire community's security and effectiveness. Weapon maintenance consumes enormous amounts of time and attention in an environment where equipment failure means death, and replacement requires months of waiting for supplies from Europe. You learn to sharpen blades to perfect keenness, adjust mail to eliminate weak spots, and maintain mechanical devices like crossbows that require understanding of engineering principles unfamiliar to conventional knights. Horse care demands expertise that goes beyond mere riding skill to encompass veterinary knowledge, breeding programs, and the logistical complexities of maintaining cavalry forces in hostile territory. Your destrier represents an investment larger than most European peasants see in lifetimes, and its health directly affects your effectiveness in combat. You learn to read subtle signs of illness, injury, or psychological stress that could compromise performance when your life depends on the animal's strength and courage. Intellectual activities during free hours include study of languages necessary for intelligence work, military engineering required for siege operations, and theological works that deepen understanding of your spiritual mission. The Order maintains libraries that contain works unavailable elsewhere in the Christian world, including translations from Arabic and Greek sources that provide knowledge essential for operations in the multicultural environment of the Holy Land. Correspondence with family and friends in Europe becomes increasingly difficult as your experiences diverge from anything they can understand or relate to. Letters home describe weather, health, and general conditions, while carefully omitting details about military operations, diplomatic activities, or the complex relationships with Muslim authorities that would appear scandalous to European sensibilities. Diplomatic duties require attendance at negotiations with local officials, participation in prisoner exchanges, and escort service for important visitors, whose safety reflects on the order's reliability and competence. These activities demand cultural sensitivity, language skills, and political understanding that extends far beyond conventional military training, while maintaining the disciplined bearing expected of Templar knights. Training exercises simulate combat conditions while providing education in tactical coordination that distinguishes Templar forces from feudal armies, dependent on individual heroism rather than unit discipline. You practice complex maneuvers with your brothers, learning to execute charges, retreats, and defensive formations that maximize effectiveness while minimizing casualties during actual combat. Religious observances punctuate each day with canonical hours that provide spiritual structure while accommodating military necessities. Prayers might be abbreviated during combat operations or extended during peaceful periods, but the rhythm of worship continues regardless of circumstances. Maintaining spiritual discipline while engaged in necessary violence requires constant vigilance against the spiritual corruption that warfare can create. Administrative responsibilities increase with advancement through the order's hierarchy, requiring skills in financial management, personnel supervision, and operational planning that few knights acquire in secular service. You learn to manage budgets that support dozens of brothers, coordinate activities across multiple locations, and plan operations that extend over months or years while maintaining security and effectiveness. Leisure activities are limited, but valued opportunities for relaxation and fellowship among brothers who share dangers and hardships that create bonds stronger than blood relationships. Chess, dice games, and storytelling provide mental stimulation, while conversation about shared experiences reinforces the brotherhood that sustains morale during difficult periods. Seasonal variations in activity level reflect both weather patterns and strategic considerations that govern military operations throughout the Middle East. Summer campaigns require preparation and execution during brutal heat that tests endurance, while winter months provide opportunities for maintenance, training, and planning that prepare for renewed fighting when weather permits more active operations. Your personal spiritual life develops through private prayer, meditation, and study that supplement communal religious observances while addressing individual needs for meaning and connection with divine purpose. The intensity of frontier military life creates spiritual challenges and opportunities unavailable to conventional monks or secular knights, requiring integration of contemplation with action in ways that transform both activities. Relationships with other military orders range from cooperation to rivalry, as Templars work alongside Hospitallers, Teutonic Knights, and various smaller organizations that share similar missions while competing for resources, influence, and prestige. Understanding these relationships becomes essential for effective coordination during major campaigns while avoiding conflicts that could undermine overall Christian defense capabilities. Health maintenance requires constant attention in an environment where medical facilities are primitive and diseases unknown in Europe pose constant threats. You learn basic medical skills necessary for treating wounds, recognize symptoms of common illnesses, and understand preventive measures that reduce risks of epidemic diseases that can devastate military units more effectively than enemy action. The psychological stresses of Templar life manifest differently among various brothers, but affect everyone who chooses this demanding existence. Some struggle with homesickness and cultural isolation. Others develop problems with authority or discipline, while many experience the spiritual crises that accompany prolonged exposure to violence and death. The Order provides support while expecting resilience from men who voluntarily chose these challenges. Your evolving understanding of the Templar mission comes through daily experience of the complexities involved in maintaining Christian presence in the Holy Land. What initially appeared as straightforward military service reveals layers of political, economic, and cultural challenges that require adaptation, flexibility, and understanding that transcends simple religious or military categories. Your education in the economic realities underlying Templar operations reveals a sophisticated financial empire that spans continents while serving military and religious purposes that require enormous resources generated through methods that push boundaries of acceptable religious practice. The Order's survival depends not just on military prowess but on business acumen that rivals the greatest merchant houses while serving higher purposes than mere profit. Banking operations begin with simple services for pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land, who need secure methods for transferring funds across dangerous territories controlled by various authorities. The Order's international network and military protection make Templar facilities ideal for these transactions, generating fees while serving legitimate religious purposes. Pilgrims deposit funds at European commanderies and receive credits redeemable in Jerusalem, Antioch, or other destination cities. The system expands naturally to serve merchants engaged in international trade who require similar services for larger transactions involving greater risks and more complex arrangements. Muslim traders, despite religious differences, often prefer Templar financial services because the Order's reputation for honesty and its military capability for protecting assets exceed those of secular alternatives. These relationships generate substantial revenue while creating diplomatic complications. Loans to royal houses throughout Europe provide both service and leverage as kings struggling with expensive military campaigns, infrastructure projects, or simple extravagance seek sources of ready cash that conventional sources cannot provide. The Templars' international resources and religious immunity from secular legal constraints make them ideal creditors, while royal defaults create political complications that threaten the Order's long-term security. Agricultural estates throughout Europe generate rental income and agricultural products that support both local operations and export to the Holy Land, where food security remains a constant challenge. Templar agricultural management often exceeds feudal standards through application of techniques learned in the Middle East and systematic approaches that maximize productivity while maintaining soil fertility for long-term sustainability. Trading ventures involve partnerships with merchants throughout the Mediterranean world who provide access to markets and products unavailable through conventional channels. Spices from the East, textiles from various regions, and manufactured goods flow through Templar trading networks that generate profits while providing strategic intelligence about economic and political conditions throughout the known world. Manufacturing activities include production of weapons, armor, and military equipment that serve both internal needs and commercial markets, where Templar products command premium prices due to superior quality and innovative design. Workshops in various commanderies produce items that incorporate knowledge gained through military experience while generating income that supports other Order activities. Real estate investments throughout urban areas of Europe provide rental income and strategic positioning that serves both economic and intelligence purposes. Templar properties in major cities serve as headquarters, safe houses, and communication centers, while generating steady income from commercial and residential tenants who benefit from the Order's protection and stability. Shipping operations connect European commanderies with Holy Land bases, while serving commercial customers who require secure transport for valuable cargoes. Templar ships carry pilgrims, merchants, and military supplies, while maintaining communication between widely scattered Order facilities. Piracy and naval warfare make these operations dangerous, but potentially profitable for organizations capable of providing armed protection. Mining ventures in various European locations provide metals essential for weapons production, while generating income through sales of surplus materials to secular customers. Silver mines prove particularly valuable, as they provide raw materials for coins that facilitate international financial operations, while creating wealth that supports military activities in the Holy Land. Financial innovations developed by the Order include early forms of banking instruments that facilitate international commerce, while reducing risks associated with transporting large amounts of coins across dangerous territories. Letters of credit, bills of exchange, and other financial instruments created by Templars influence commercial development throughout Europe, while serving the Order's practical needs. Investment strategies balance immediate needs for supporting military operations against long-term requirements for sustainable income generation. The Order must maintain armed forces, fortifications, and logistical systems while accumulating reserves sufficient to weather crises, expand operations, and maintain independence from secular authorities who might seek to control or exploit Templar resources. Accounting systems track revenues and expenses across multiple territories with different currencies, legal systems, and economic conditions, while maintaining records that satisfy both religious requirements for stewardship and military necessities for operational planning. Templar bookkeepers develop sophisticated methods for recording transactions, calculating profits, and planning resource allocation that influence commercial practices throughout Europe. Tax exemptions granted by papal authority provide competitive advantages that secular merchants and banking houses cannot match, allowing the Order to offer better terms while maintaining profitability. These privileges generate resentment among competing interests who argue that religious organizations should not engage in commercial activities that undermine secular businesses, creating political tensions that threaten the order's long-term security. Currency exchange operations take advantage of the order's international presence and detailed knowledge of exchange rates, political conditions, and trading opportunities that exist between different regions. Templar facilities in major commercial centers facilitate currency conversion while generating profits from rate differences and providing services that support international commerce. Charitable activities required by religious vows include support for poor pilgrims, hospital services, and disaster relief that fulfill spiritual obligations while creating goodwill among secular authorities and populations who benefit from these services. Balancing charitable obligations against military necessities requires careful resource allocation that maintains the order's religious legitimacy while supporting its primary mission. Intelligence gathering through commercial activities provides information essential for military planning while creating cover for espionage operations that would appear suspicious if conducted openly. Templar merchants, bankers, and traders develop extensive networks of contacts who provide information about political developments, military preparations, and economic conditions that affect the order's strategic planning. Technological investments include development of improved weapons, fortification techniques, and logistical systems that provide military advantages while creating commercial opportunities through licensing or sale of innovations to other organizations. The order's research and development activities often exceed those of secular authorities because religious dedication combines with economic resources to support sustained investigation of technical problems. Risk management strategies address the dangers inherent in operating across multiple territories subject to different rulers, legal systems, and political conditions that can change rapidly and threaten Templar assets, personnel, and operations. The order develops diversification strategies, contingency plans, and insurance arrangements that protect against various threats while maintaining operational effectiveness. Regulatory compliance requires understanding of and conformity with numerous legal systems that govern commercial activities in different jurisdictions, while maintaining religious autonomy and privileges that exempt the order from many secular restrictions. Navigating these complex legal environments requires expertise that few organizations possess, while creating advantages that generate additional resentment among competitors. Labor management involves supervision of numerous employees who work in various Templar enterprises throughout Europe and the Middle East, while maintaining security necessary for protecting sensitive information and assets. The order employs both religious brothers and secular workers whose loyalty must be ensured through various means that balance economic incentives with security requirements. Quality control maintains standards that preserve the order's reputation for reliability and excellence, while serving diverse markets with different expectations and requirements. Templar products and services command premium prices because customers trust the organization's integrity and competence, creating brand value that must be protected through consistent performance across all activities. Strategic planning integrates economic activities with military and religious objectives while adapting to changing conditions that affect the order's capabilities, opportunities, and threats. Long-term success requires balancing immediate needs against future requirements while maintaining flexibility necessary for responding to unforeseen developments that could threaten the organization's survival. The psychological impact of combining religious vows with commercial activities creates tensions that affect individual brothers differently depending on their backgrounds, personalities, and spiritual development. Some embrace the challenge of serving God through worldly success, while others struggle with apparent contradictions between religious ideals and business necessities that seem to compromise spiritual purity. Your advancement within the Templar hierarchy brings exposure to political complexities that extend far beyond simple military service in the Holy Land, to encompass relationships with royal courts, ecclesiastical authorities, and rival organizations that view the order's growing power with combinations of admiration, envy, and alarm. Navigating these relationships requires diplomatic skills that complement military training, while serving the order's mission in an increasingly hostile political environment. Papal politics affect every aspect of Templar operations as different popes bring varying levels of support, understanding, and suspicion to their relationships with military orders that operate internationally, while claiming direct papal authority that bypasses normal ecclesiastical hierarchies. Maintaining papal favor requires careful attention to church politics while avoiding entanglement in disputes that could compromise the order's independence and effectiveness. Royal courts throughout Europe present opportunities and dangers as kings seek to exploit Templar resources for their own purposes while resenting the order's immunity from secular authority that enables activities potentially threatening to royal interests. Your diplomatic duties include negotiating loans, arranging military support, and managing relationships that benefit both parties while protecting the order's autonomy. Rivalries with other military orders create competitive dynamics that sometimes enhance overall Christian military effectiveness while other times undermining cooperation necessary for successful operations in the Holy Land. The Hospitallers in particular compete directly with Templars for resources, influence, and prestige while serving similar missions that should promote collaboration rather than rivalry. Noble families throughout Europe maintain complex relationships with the order that involve family members serving as Templars, financial arrangements that benefit both parties, and political alliances that serve mutual interests while creating dependencies that can become liabilities when political conditions change. Managing these relationships requires understanding of genealogies, inheritance patterns, and family politics that influence larger political developments. Ecclesiastical politics within the church hierarchy involve relationships with bishops, archbishops, and various religious orders that sometimes cooperate with Templar activities, while other times opposing them based on jurisdictional disputes, theological differences, or simple competition for resources and influence. Maintaining good relationships with church authorities requires diplomatic skill and theological sophistication. Urban politics in major European cities where Templars maintain significant presences involve relationships with merchant guilds, city councils, and other secular authorities who benefit from Templar economic activities, while resenting the order's legal immunities and competitive advantages. These relationships require careful balance between cooperation and independence that serves all parties while protecting Templar interests. International diplomacy involves Templar participation in negotiations between Christian and Muslim authorities that extend beyond simple prisoner exchanges to encompass trade agreements, territorial arrangements, and intelligence sharing that would appear scandalous to ordinary Christians, but prove essential for maintaining viable Christian presence in the Holy Land. Intelligence operations conducted by the Order include espionage activities throughout both Christian and Muslim territories that provide information essential for military planning, while creating capabilities that secular authorities find threatening. Your training in intelligence work requires discretion and sophisticated understanding of the political dynamics that govern relationships between competing powers. Succession disputes in various kingdoms create opportunities for Templar influence while generating risks that involvement in contested successions could result in backing losing claimants who might seek revenge against the order if they eventually gain power. Supporting royal claimants requires careful evaluation of their prospects while maintaining relationships with potential rivals. Marriage politics involve Templar interests in royal and noble marriages that affect political balances throughout Europe, while creating opportunities for expanding the order's influence through family connections. Though individual Templars cannot marry, the Order maintains interests in marriages that affect political and economic conditions, influencing its operations. Legal disputes arise regularly as the Order's activities conflict with secular and ecclesiastical authorities who challenge Templar privileges, question their business practices, or seek to impose restrictions that would compromise operational effectiveness. Defending legal positions requires expertise in canon law, secular legal systems, and diplomatic negotiation that few organizations possess. Financial leverage created through the Order's banking operations provides political influence that extends far beyond military capability, as kings, nobles, and merchants who depend on Templar financial services must consider the Order's interests when making political decisions. This influence creates power, while generating resentment among those who prefer independence from Templar constraints. Military alliances involve coordination between Templar forces and secular armies during major campaigns, while maintaining the Order's independence and avoiding entanglement in conflicts that do not serve its primary mission of defending Christian interests in the Holy Land. These alliances require careful negotiation of command relationships, resource sharing, and strategic objectives. Technological advantages gained through the Order's research and development activities provide diplomatic leverage as secular authorities seek access to Templar innovations in military engineering, fortification design, and weapons technology. Sharing these advantages creates goodwill, while maintaining exclusive access preserves competitive benefits that serve the Order's strategic interests. Communication networks maintained by the Order facilitate information sharing that serves both internal coordination and external diplomatic activities, while creating intelligence capabilities that secular authorities find useful but potentially threatening. Managing access to these networks requires balancing cooperation with security considerations that protect sensitive information. Cultural influence exercised through Templar educational activities, architectural projects, and scholarly pursuits affects intellectual and artistic development throughout Europe, while creating soft power that complements military and economic influence. This cultural impact generates respect, while sometimes creating suspicion about the Order's ultimate objectives and loyalty to conventional Christian values. Regional politics vary significantly between different areas where Templars operate, requiring understanding of local conditions, power structures, and cultural factors that influence the Order's effectiveness and security. Success in one region does not guarantee similar results elsewhere, necessitating adaptive strategies that accommodate diverse political environments. Your personal development in diplomatic skills occurs through exposure to these complex political relationships while learning to represent the Order's interests effectively without compromising its security or mission. Diplomatic training includes languages, cultural knowledge, negotiation techniques, and strategic thinking that complement military training while serving different aspects of the Order's multifaceted operations. The long-term political challenges facing the Order include growing suspicion about its power and impotence, increasing competition from secular authorities seeking to control or exploit its resources, and the fundamental tension between serving international religious purposes while maintaining relationships with numerous secular authorities whose interests may conflict with Templar objectives. Your education in Templar military doctrine reveals innovations that distinguish the Order's approach to warfare from conventional feudal practices, while adapting European knightly traditions to Middle Eastern conditions that require different tactics, strategies, and organizational methods. These developments create military capabilities that exceed those of secular armies while serving the Order's unique mission and operational requirements. Disciplined cavalry charges represent the Order's adaptation of traditional heavy cavalry tactics to conditions where undisciplined individual heroism proves counterproductive against Muslim armies that rely on mobility, archery, and tactical flexibility to defeat European forces. Templar cavalry units train extensively in coordinated maneuvers that maximize shock effect while maintaining unit cohesion under fire from mounted archers. Combined arms coordination integrates cavalry, infantry, and crossbow units in tactical systems that provide mutual support, while exploiting the advantages of each component against different types of enemy forces. These combinations require training and discipline that exceed feudal military standards while creating capabilities that secular armies struggle to duplicate due to their reliance on individual nobles rather than professional units. Siege warfare techniques developed through decades of experience in the Holy Land incorporate both European engineering knowledge and innovations learned from Muslim opponents who possess sophisticated understanding of fortification design and siegecraft. Templar engineers develop new approaches to attacking and defending fortifications while training brother knights in specialized skills required for siege operations. Fortification design reflects Templar understanding of Middle Eastern warfare conditions while incorporating architectural innovations that provide better defensive capabilities than conventional European castle designs. Templar fortifications balance military effectiveness against construction costs while accommodating the dual religious and military purposes that distinguish the Order's facilities from purely secular or religious buildings. Intelligence operations support military planning through systematic collection and analysis of information about enemy capabilities, intentions, and activities while developing counterintelligence measures that protect Templar operations from enemy intelligence gathering. These capabilities require specialized training that few secular military organizations possess. Logistics systems maintain armed forces operating at great distances from European supply bases, while serving in hostile environments where local resources may be insufficient or unavailable. Templar logistics innovations include supply chain management, transportation methods, and resource allocation strategies that enable sustained operations under challenging conditions. Training methods develop individual fighting skills while emphasizing unit discipline and tactical coordination that distinguish Templar forces from feudal armies dependent on individual prowess rather than collective effectiveness. Training programs integrate physical conditioning, weapons proficiency, tactical education, and psychological preparation for the stresses of combat in foreign environments. Medical support includes both treatment of battle injuries and prevention of diseases that claim more casualties than combat in Middle Eastern campaigns. Templar medical knowledge incorporates both European and Islamic medical traditions while developing field treatment methods adapted to military requirements and resource constraints. Communication systems coordinate activities across widely dispersed forces while maintaining security necessary for protecting operational plans and intelligence from enemy discovery. These systems include methods for rapid message transmission, encryption techniques, and verification procedures that ensure message authenticity and recipient security. Equipment innovations adapt European weapons and armor to Middle Eastern conditions while incorporating improvements learned through combat experience and contact with Muslim military technology. Templar equipment often exceeds secular standards through systematic testing and development that serves both immediate combat needs and long-term strategic requirements. Tactical flexibility allows Templar units to adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions while maintaining the discipline and coordination necessary for effective execution of complex maneuvers under combat stress. This flexibility distinguishes professional military orders from feudal armies bound by rigid social hierarchies that limit tactical adaptation. Strategic planning integrates military operations with political, economic, and diplomatic activities while adapting to changing conditions that affect the balance of power between Christian and Muslim forces throughout the Middle East. Strategic planning requires understanding of factors beyond immediate military considerations while maintaining focus on the order's primary mission. Recruitment and selection develop systematic methods for identifying, evaluating, and training candidates who possess the physical, mental, and spiritual qualities necessary for effective service in demanding military and religious roles. These methods ensure consistent quality while adapting to changing operational requirements and recruitment conditions. Leadership development prepares brother knights for command responsibilities that require both military competence and administrative skills, while maintaining the spiritual discipline and moral authority necessary for leading men who have taken religious vows. Leadership training balances practical military needs with religious requirements that distinguish Templar commanders from secular military leaders. Technological development includes research into improved weapons, defensive systems, and support equipment that provide competitive advantages while serving the Order's operational requirements. Technological innovation requires resources and expertise that few organizations can sustain while maintaining security necessary for protecting military advantages from enemy discovery. Alliance coordination involves cooperation with other Christian military forces while maintaining Templar independence and operational security that serves the Order's unique mission and organizational requirements. Alliance relationships require diplomatic skill and strategic understanding that complement military capabilities while avoiding entanglement in conflicts that do not serve Templar interests. Operational security protects sensitive information about Templar capabilities, plans, and activities while enabling effective coordination between different elements of the Order's operations. Security measures must balance operational effectiveness against the risks created by enemy intelligence gathering and infiltration attempts that target all successful military organizations. Veteran integration addresses the challenges of incorporating experienced warriors from secular military service, while maintaining the religious discipline and organizational culture that distinguish Templar units from conventional armies. Successful integration requires careful selection and intensive training that transforms secular knights into religious warriors. Adaptation to local conditions requires understanding of geographical, cultural, and political factors that affect military operations in different regions, while maintaining organizational coherence and effectiveness across diverse operational environments. Successful adaptation balances local requirements against standardized procedures that ensure consistent performance. Innovation cycles develop systematic methods for identifying, testing, and implementing improvements in military doctrine, equipment, and procedures, while maintaining operational effectiveness during periods of change and development. Innovation requires resources, expertise, and organizational flexibility that few military organizations possess. Your initiation into the innermost circles of Templar knowledge reveals aspects of the Order's mission that extend far beyond conventional military service to encompass responsibilities for preserving sacred knowledge, maintaining ancient traditions, and preparing for future challenges that require capabilities transcending ordinary military and religious organizations. This knowledge comes with obligations that bind you to secrecy, more complete than any previous vows. Archaeological discoveries made during construction and renovation activities at Temple Mount and other sacred sites reveal artifacts, documents, and architectural features that challenge conventional understanding of early Christian history, while providing insights into religious traditions that predate accepted church doctrine. These discoveries must be carefully studied and protected, while maintaining secrecy that prevents dangerous controversy. Ancient manuscripts acquired through various means include texts that were excluded from the biblical canon, works by early Christian authors whose teachings differ from orthodox doctrine, and documents that suggest alternative interpretations of fundamental Christian beliefs. Studying these materials requires theological sophistication, while maintaining faith in core Christian principles that justify the order's existence. Mystical traditions preserved within the order include practices and beliefs derived from various sources that enrich understanding of Christian spirituality, while potentially conflicting with conventional religious authority. These traditions provide spiritual resources for brothers engaged in demanding military service while requiring discretion that protects against charges of heresy or deviation from accepted beliefs. Relationship with Eastern Christian churches provides access to theological perspectives, mystical practices, and historical traditions that differ from Roman Catholic teachings while maintaining legitimate Christian origins that justify study and potential adoption. These relationships require diplomatic skill, while balancing theological curiosity against religious orthodoxy. Connections with Jewish scholars enable access to Hebrew language skills, scriptural interpretation methods, and historical knowledge that enhance understanding of Christian origins while creating opportunities for intellectual collaboration that must be carefully concealed from authorities who forbid such interactions. These relationships provide valuable knowledge while creating dangerous political complications. Islamic scholarship offers insights into philosophy, science, medicine, and theology that exceed European knowledge while representing enemy traditions that officially cannot be acknowledged as valuable or legitimate. Covert study of Islamic works provides practical benefits while challenging cultural assumptions about the superiority of Christian learning. Scientific investigation includes study of natural phenomena, mathematical principles, and technical innovations that provide practical advantages while potentially conflicting with religious teachings about the nature of reality and divine creation. Balancing scientific inquiry with religious faith requires intellectual sophistication that few individuals possess. Architectural symbolism incorporated into Templar buildings conveys information and principles that serve both practical and spiritual purposes while communicating with initiates who possess knowledge necessary for interpretation. This symbolism preserves important concepts while protecting them from those who lack proper understanding or authorization. Ritual practices developed within the order serve both spiritual and practical purposes while incorporating elements derived from various traditions that enrich religious experience without necessarily contradicting fundamental Christian beliefs. These practices must be carefully balanced against conventional religious requirements while serving the order's unique needs. Prophetic traditions include various predictions and revelations that concern the order's ultimate destiny, the fate of Christendom, and future challenges that require preparation and knowledge currently possessed only by the most trusted inner circle. These traditions influence long-term planning, while creating psychological and spiritual pressures on those who bear responsibility for acting on prophetic knowledge. Custodial responsibilities involve protection of sacred artifacts, important documents, and other materials that possess historical or spiritual significance requiring preservation for future generations. These responsibilities extend beyond simple physical protection to include maintaining knowledge necessary for proper interpretation and use of protected materials. Educational activities include instruction of selected brothers in specialized knowledge that serves both practical and spiritual purposes while maintaining secrecy necessary for protecting sensitive information. Education must balance knowledge transmission with security requirements while ensuring that recipients possess proper qualifications and authorization. Diplomatic activities involve relationships with various individuals and organizations that possess relevant knowledge or capabilities while maintaining secrecy about the full extent of Templar interests and activities. These relationships require sophisticated judgment about trustworthiness and discretion while serving the order's larger purposes. Research projects investigate questions that extend beyond immediate operational requirements to encompass broader issues concerning Christian history, spiritual development, and future challenges that require systematic study and preparation. Research activities must balance intellectual curiosity against security requirements while serving practical purposes. Preservation activities include copying important documents, maintaining archives, and protecting materials that might be lost or destroyed during periods of conflict or political upheaval. Preservation requires both material resources and specialized knowledge while serving future generations who may need access to currently protected information. Interpretation activities involve analysis and explanation of complex materials that require specialized knowledge while serving both educational and practical purposes. Interpretation must balance accuracy with appropriate levels of disclosure while ensuring that sensitive information reaches only qualified and authorized recipients. Transmission activities ensure that important knowledge passes between generations of Templars while maintaining security and integrity necessary for protecting sensitive information. Transmission requires careful selection of recipients while maintaining continuity that serves the Order's long-term mission and responsibilities. Integration activities combine various sources of knowledge into coherent understanding that serves both practical and spiritual purposes while maintaining appropriate boundaries between different types of information. Integration requires intellectual sophistication while serving the Order's complex mission and diverse operational requirements. Application activities use specialized knowledge for practical purposes that serve the Order's mission while maintaining secrecy necessary for protecting sensitive information and capabilities. Application must balance effectiveness with security while ensuring that knowledge serves legitimate purposes rather than personal or factional interests. The psychological impact of possessing secret knowledge creates both privileges and burdens that affect different individuals according to their personalities, spiritual development, and ability to integrate complex and sometimes conflicting information. Knowledge brings responsibility while creating isolation from those who cannot share the burden of dangerous secrets. Your awareness of growing threats to the Templar Order develops gradually as political, economic, and religious pressures converge to create dangers that may prove insurmountable despite the organization's military prowess, financial resources, and international influence. Understanding these threats becomes essential for individual survival, while serving the Order's interests during increasingly dangerous times. Royal resentment toward Templar independence and wealth intensifies as kings throughout Europe struggle with financial problems, while observing an international organization that possesses resources exceeding those of many kingdoms. Philip IV of France in particular combines personal debt to the Templars with political ambitions that view the Order as both obstacle and opportunity for expanding royal power. Ecclesiastical suspicion about Templar activities grows as church authorities observe an organization that claims papal authority, while operating with unusual independence and secrecy that suggests possible deviation from orthodox religious practices. Rumors about secret initiation ceremonies, unusual religious observances, and relationships with non-Christian authorities create ammunition for enemies seeking to challenge the Order's legitimacy. Economic competition from secular merchants and banking houses generates resentment toward Templar commercial advantages derived from religious privileges that ordinary businesses cannot match. Competitors seek political allies who might restrict or eliminate Templar economic activities while transferring profitable opportunities to secular organizations that pay taxes and submit to royal authority. Military obsolescence begins to affect the Order's primary justification, as changing conditions in the Holy Land reduce the effectiveness of traditional cavalry tactics, while new military technologies and strategies make Templar fortifications and training methods less relevant to contemporary warfare. The Order's military advantages erode, while its political and economic activities generate increasing opposition. Internal divisions within the Order create vulnerabilities that enemies can exploit, while undermining the unity and discipline necessary for effective response to external threats. Disagreements about policy, personality conflicts between leaders, and generational differences between older members who remember the Order's founding mission and younger members who know only its current prosperity create factional tensions. Intelligence penetration by enemy agents creates security breaches that compromise operations while providing opponents with information useful for planning attacks on the Order's interests and reputation. Maintaining security becomes increasingly difficult as the organization's size and complexity create opportunities for infiltration by individuals whose loyalty cannot be verified. Propaganda campaigns conducted by enemies systematically undermine the Order's reputation through circulation of rumors, accusations, and fabricated evidence designed to create public opinion hostile to Templar interests. These campaigns exploit existing suspicions while creating new concerns that influence political and ecclesiastical authorities who possess power to restrict or eliminate the organization. Legal challenges multiply as various authorities question Templar privileges, dispute their business practices, and seek to impose restrictions that would compromise the Order's effectiveness and independence. Defending against legal attacks requires resources and attention that divert energy from primary missions, while creating precedents that encourage additional challenges. Diplomatic isolation develops as former allies distance themselves from an organization that appears increasingly controversial and potentially dangerous to associate with. Maintaining international relationships becomes more difficult, as political calculations change in response to shifting perceptions about the Order's power, legitimacy, and future prospects. Financial pressures increase as military operations in the Holy Land become more expensive while political opposition reduces income from traditional sources. The Order must balance immediate operational needs against long-term sustainability while adapting to changing economic conditions that threaten its financial independence and capability. Succession crises in various kingdoms create opportunities for enemies to gain influence while reducing support from traditional allies who may lack interest in maintaining relationships established by their predecessors. Political instability throughout Europe affects the Order's strategic environment while creating new threats and opportunities that require careful navigation. Technological changes in military affairs reduce the relative advantages that Templar training and equipment previously provided while increasing costs for maintaining competitive capabilities. Adapting to new technologies requires resources and expertise while maintaining effectiveness against opponents who adopt innovations more quickly than traditional military organizations. Cultural shifts in European society create attitudes less favorable to international military orders, while promoting values that emphasize national identity, secular authority, and economic development over religious warfare and monastic ideals. These changes affect recruitment, public support, and political backing necessary for the Order's continued effectiveness. Popular opinion becomes increasingly suspicious of wealthy religious organizations whose activities appear to contradict religious ideals of poverty and humility while serving purposes that ordinary people cannot understand or appreciate. Maintaining public support becomes more difficult as the Order's complexity and secrecy generate misunderstanding and hostility. Coordination problems between different elements of the international organization create inefficiencies and vulnerabilities while reducing the effectiveness that unity and discipline previously provided. Managing a complex international organization becomes more difficult as external pressures increase while internal coordination becomes less reliable. Resource allocation disputes arise as different priorities compete for limited resources, while external pressures require increased expenditures for defense, security, and political activities that do not directly serve the Order's primary mission. Balancing competing needs becomes increasingly difficult as resources become scarcer while threats multiply. Strategic planning must account for increasingly complex and dangerous environmental conditions while maintaining focus on fundamental objectives that justify the Order's existence. Long-term planning becomes more difficult as the political and military situation deteriorates while traditional advantages erode. Your personal situation reflects these broader challenges as career advancement opportunities diminish while security risks increase and the organization's future becomes increasingly uncertain. Individual brothers must balance loyalty to the Order against personal survival considerations while maintaining religious vows that bind them to an organization whose prospects appear increasingly questionable. Your world collapses on that Friday, October 13th, 1307, when armed men bearing the royal seal of France surround every Templar property simultaneously, executing arrest warrants signed by King Philip IV that charge the entire Order with heresy, blasphemy, and various crimes against Christian faith. The coordinated nature of the arrests reveals planning that spans months, while the specific charges suggest access to information that could only come from within the Order itself. The charges leveled against you and your brothers include denying Christ, spitting on the cross during secret initiation ceremonies, worshipping an idol called Baphomet, and engaging in various immoral practices that allegedly characterize Templar religious observances. These accusations strike at the heart of the Order's religious legitimacy, while providing justification for confiscation of Templar properties and assets throughout the Kingdom of France. Your imprisonment in the royal dungeons of Paris subjects you to interrogation techniques designed to extract confessions that will validate the charges while providing additional evidence for use against other members of the Order. The interrogators combine physical torture with psychological pressure while offering reduced sentences for cooperation that creates incentives for brothers to implicate their colleagues in alleged crimes. Torture methods employed by royal officials include techniques developed through centuries of experience in extracting confessions from suspected heretics and criminals. The rack, thumbscrews, and heated instruments are applied systematically, while medical supervision ensures that victims remain conscious and capable of providing testimony. The physical agony becomes secondary to the psychological pressure of watching fellow brothers subjected to similar treatment. Confessions extracted under torture provide the evidence needed to justify continued prosecution while creating legal precedents that extend prosecution to Templars throughout Europe. Many brothers, unable to endure torture or hoping to save their lives, provide statements that implicate themselves and others in various alleged crimes, creating a catalogue of accusations that appears to validate the original charges. Legal proceedings conducted by royal courts present the appearance of justice while operating according to predetermined conclusions that ensure conviction regardless of evidence or testimony. The trials serve propaganda purposes by publicizing accusations while demonstrating royal power over organizations that previously claimed independence from secular authority. Papal response to the arrests creates complications for both the accusers and the accused, as Pope Clement V, himself under French political pressure, must balance church authority against royal power, while addressing charges that potentially implicate papal approval of heretical activities. The Pope's eventual suppression of the order represents political necessity, rather than theological conviction. Your Grand Master Jacques de Molay becomes the focal point of the proceedings, as his treatment and eventual confession under torture provide legitimacy for charges against the entire organization. His later recantation and final speech before execution demonstrate courage, while highlighting the injustice of proceedings designed to destroy the order regardless of guilt or innocence. International reactions vary according to political relationships with France, as some rulers follow French example, while others resist pressure to prosecute Templars within their territories. The varying responses reveal the extent to which the order's fate depends on political calculations, rather than religious or legal considerations. Property confiscations provide the real motivation for the prosecution, as royal officials systematically inventory and seize Templar assets throughout France, while preventing any possibility of appeal or recovery. The wealth accumulated over 2 centuries of operations becomes the foundation for royal financial recovery, while eliminating a potential source of opposition to royal authority. Your personal experience during imprisonment becomes a test of faith that challenges everything you believed about the order, the church, and the nature of divine justice. Watching torture destroy your brothers while false accusations are accepted as truth creates spiritual crisis that requires individual resolution without institutional support or guidance. Resistance efforts by some Templars create legends that persist long after the order's official dissolution, while providing hope that the organization might somehow survive its persecution. These efforts remain largely ineffective against coordinated royal power, while creating additional risks for brothers who attempt to maintain organizational loyalty. Secret knowledge preserved by the order faces destruction, as archives are confiscated and key holders are imprisoned or killed, potentially eliminating centuries of accumulated wisdom and creating gaps in historical and spiritual understanding that may never be recovered. The loss extends beyond individual suffering to encompass cultural and intellectual catastrophe. Negotiations between different authorities concerning the order's fate reveal the political nature of the prosecution, while demonstrating that guilt or innocence remains secondary to considerations of power, wealth, and political advantage. The order's destruction serves multiple purposes that have little connection to the alleged religious crimes. Your fellow brothers respond to persecution differently according to their personalities, spiritual development, and understanding of the charges and proceedings. Some maintain absolute denial, while others provide confessions that implicate themselves and colleagues. These different responses create additional divisions within an organization already fractured by external pressure. The final dissolution of the order by papal bull in 1312 provides formal closure, while transferring most Templar properties to the Hospitallers and other organizations that serve royal interests better than an independent international military order. The dissolution represents political necessity rather than religious conviction, while eliminating an organization that had outlived its usefulness to secular authorities. Individual fates of surviving Templars vary according to their locations, political connections, and willingness to cooperate with authorities, while adapting to circumstances that require abandonment of religious vows and organizational loyalty. Some join other religious orders, while others return to secular life, but all must live with the knowledge that their life's devotion served an organization that could not protect itself from determined enemies. Historical legacy of the order becomes subject to interpretation and mythology that often bears little relationship to actual Templar activities, while serving various political and religious purposes for later generations. The reality of your experience disappears behind legends of treasure, conspiracy, and supernatural power that provide more interesting narratives than the complex truth of religious warfare and political persecution. Your personal reckoning with the destruction of everything you devoted your life to serve becomes a private spiritual journey that must be completed without institutional support or communal fellowship. The loss of brotherhood, mission, and identity requires individual reconstruction of meaning that may or may not succeed in creating a viable foundation for whatever life remains possible. The lessons learned through the Order's destruction concern the relationship between power and justice, the vulnerability of even strong institutions to coordinated attack, and the importance of understanding political realities that govern religious and military organizations. These lessons come too late to save the Order, but may provide wisdom for future generations who face similar challenges. Tonight, as you contemplate the ruins of your former life from whatever refuge you have managed to find, you understand that serving something greater than yourself requires accepting the possibility that what you serve may not survive the forces arrayed against it. The white mantle with its red cross has been stripped away, but the memory of what it meant to wear it in service to God and Christendom remains as both burden and blessing. The Order may be destroyed, but the ideals it represented continue in the hearts of those who chose to transform themselves in service to something they believed worthy of their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. But Rijar's story does not end with imprisonment and persecution. It continues in the shadows, in the secret places where surviving brothers gather to preserve what can be preserved and to plan for what might yet be accomplished. Your life after the official dissolution of the Templar Order requires skills you never learned during your training as a warrior monk. The ability to disappear into ordinary society, to adopt new identities, and to maintain connections with surviving brothers, while avoiding detection by authorities who continue to hunt former Templars throughout Europe. The transformation from respected knight to hunted fugitive tests your resourcefulness in ways that combat never did. Safe houses throughout Europe provide temporary refuge for displaced Templars while serving as communication centers for an underground network that maintains some semblance of organizational structure. Despite official dissolution, these locations must appear completely ordinary to outside observers while providing secure meeting places for brothers who risk their lives every time they gather to coordinate survival efforts and preservation activities. New identities become necessary for survival, as former Templars adopt civilian occupations that provide cover, while utilizing skills developed during religious military service. Some become merchants, using financial knowledge gained through Templar banking operations. Others work as craftsmen, applying engineering and technical skills learned during castle construction and siege warfare. Many join secular military forces under assumed names, continuing to serve Christian armies while concealing their true backgrounds. Communication methods developed to maintain contact between scattered survivors, while avoiding interception by authorities who monitor correspondence and infiltrate suspected gatherings. Coded messages hidden in seemingly innocent business correspondence allow coordination of activities, while verbal passwords and recognition signs enable brothers to identify each other safely when meeting in public places. Preservation efforts focus on protecting and copying important documents, religious artifacts, and sacred knowledge that authorities seek to destroy along with the organization that possessed them. Underground scriptoriums produce copies of essential texts, while trusted craftsmen create hiding places for materials that must be preserved for future generations who might understand their significance. Financial resources hidden before the arrests provide funding for survival activities while supporting families of imprisoned or executed brothers who face destitution after losing their primary sources of income. Managing these resources requires careful discretion while ensuring that assistance reaches those who need it without creating patterns that might reveal the underground network's existence. Recruitment activities carefully evaluate potential allies among sympathetic clergy, nobles and merchants who oppose the persecution while possessing resources or influence that could support surviving Templars. These relationships must be developed slowly and cautiously, while balancing the need for assistance against the risks of exposure that could destroy remaining members of the underground organization. Intelligence gathering monitors government activities, church policies, and public opinion that affect the safety and opportunities available to former Templars. while providing information necessary for planning future activities. Understanding political developments becomes essential for survival, while creating possibilities for eventual restoration or transformation of the organization. Spiritual activities maintain religious observances and mystical practices that define Templar identity, while adapting to circumstances that require secrecy and flexibility, impossible during the Order's official existence. Private chapels and hidden altars provide spaces for worship, while modified rituals accommodate the realities of underground religious life. Training programs continue to develop skills necessary for both survival and potential future operations, while maintaining the military and intellectual traditions that distinguish the Templar Order from conventional religious organizations. Physical conditioning, weapons training, and strategic thinking remain important while adapting to changing circumstances and requirements. Connections with other persecuted groups create alliances that provide mutual support, while sharing information about survival techniques and resistance methods developed by various organizations facing similar challenges from secular and religious authorities. These relationships expand resources while creating additional security risks that must be carefully managed. Your personal adaptation to underground life requires abandoning the public identity and social status that defined your previous existence, while developing new relationships and occupational skills that provide cover for continued Templar activities. The psychological adjustment proves as challenging as the practical requirements, while testing faith and commitment under circumstances that offer little reward beyond survival itself. Economic activities generate income necessary for supporting underground operations, while utilizing commercial knowledge and connections developed during official Templar business activities. Trade relationships, banking services, and investment opportunities must be pursued under assumed identities while maintaining security necessary for protecting both profits and personnel. Diplomatic efforts seek to influence political and religious authorities who might be persuaded to moderate their persecution or even restore some form of official recognition to surviving Templars willing to operate under new restrictions and oversight. These negotiations require extreme caution while balancing hope for restoration against the risks of betrayal by seemingly sympathetic officials. Educational activities transmit knowledge and traditions to younger members who joined the underground organization after the official dissolution, while ensuring continuity of Templar culture and mission despite changed circumstances. Teaching must occur in secret, while adapting traditional methods to new requirements and limitations. Research projects continue investigation of historical, theological, and scientific questions that interested the official organization, while serving practical purposes related to survival and potential future restoration. Scholarly activities must be conducted discreetly, while maintaining standards of accuracy and thoroughness that preserve intellectual credibility. Technological development adapts innovations originally created for military purposes to civilian applications that generate income while providing cover for continued research and development activities. Engineering knowledge, architectural skills, and mechanical innovations find new applications while maintaining the technological advantages that distinguish Templar operations. Cultural influence operates through anonymous contributions to artistic, literary, and architectural projects that preserve Templar values and knowledge, while avoiding direct attribution that might compromise security. Supporting cultural development serves both spiritual and practical purposes, while maintaining connections to broader European intellectual life. Your understanding of the Templar mission evolves as circumstances force adaptation from military operations in the Holy Land to spiritual warfare against the corruption and materialism that contributed to the Order's destruction. The enemy is no longer simply Muslim armies, but the broader forces of greed, political manipulation, and spiritual decay that threaten Christian civilization from within. Spiritual renewal becomes the primary focus as surviving Templars dedicate themselves to purifying their own souls while working to restore authentic Christian values in communities throughout Europe. This internal crusade requires different weapons than those used in physical warfare, while demanding equal courage and commitment from brothers who must fight battles that may never be recognized or celebrated. Social reform activities address poverty, injustice, and corruption in European society, while working within existing institutions to promote changes that serve Christian ideals of charity, justice, and spiritual development. These efforts must be conducted secretly, while achieving results that improve conditions for ordinary people who suffered from the same abuses of power that destroyed the Templar Order. Educational initiatives establish schools, libraries, and scholarly institutions that provide learning opportunities while preserving and transmitting knowledge that secular and religious authorities might prefer to suppress. Education becomes a weapon against ignorance and superstition while serving the long-term development of European intellectual life. Mystical practices deepen as underground Templars explore spiritual traditions and contemplative methods that provide meaning and purpose during times of persecution and uncertainty. Mysticism offers direct connection with divine purpose while compensating for the loss of institutional religious support that previously sustained brothers through difficult periods. Prophetic studies focus on understanding signs and predictions that might reveal divine intentions concerning the future of Christendom and the role that former Templars might play in upcoming spiritual and political developments. Prophecy provides hope, while guiding practical planning for potential future opportunities to serve more openly. Alchemical research continues investigations into natural philosophy and experimental science that served both practical and spiritual purposes during the Order's official existence. Alchemy offers methods for understanding divine creation while developing practical applications that generate income and provide useful innovations for human welfare. Healing ministries utilize medical knowledge accumulated through contact with Islamic and Byzantine physicians while serving communities that lack adequate healthcare. Medical service provides cover for underground activities while fulfilling charitable obligations that justify continued existence despite official persecution. Artistic patronage supports painters, sculptors, musicians, and writers whose works convey spiritual values and preserve cultural traditions that secular authorities might neglect or suppress. Anonymous patronage allows influence over cultural development while maintaining security necessary for protecting both artists and patrons from persecution. Theological research explores questions concerning church corruption, religious reform, and the relationship between institutional Christianity and authentic spiritual development. Theological work addresses problems that contributed to the Order's destruction, while seeking solutions that might prevent similar disasters in the future. Your personal spiritual development deepens through contemplation, study, and service that provide meaning despite the loss of institutional framework that previously structured religious life. Individual spiritual growth becomes more important than organizational advancement while creating inner resources necessary for sustained resistance to despair and bitterness. Community building creates networks of lay supporters, sympathetic clergy, and reformed nobles who share values and objectives that align with Templar ideals while providing practical support for underground activities. These communities must appear entirely conventional while serving as infrastructure for continued Templar influence. International cooperation maintains contacts with surviving Templars in other countries while coordinating activities that serve common objectives despite different national contexts and security requirements. International relationships provide resources and information while creating opportunities for mutual support during dangerous periods. Political influence operates through carefully placed individuals who serve in various governmental and ecclesiastical positions while promoting policies that serve Templar objectives without revealing their underground connections. Political work requires exceptional discretion while achieving results that benefit both immediate survival and long-term restoration goals. Economic warfare utilizes financial knowledge and commercial connections to undermine the prosperity of those responsible for Templar persecution while supporting individuals and institutions that promote justice and reform. Economic activities become methods of resistance while generating resources necessary for continued operations. Intelligence networks provide information about political developments, religious policies, and social conditions that affect the safety and opportunities available to surviving Templars, while serving broader objectives related to Christian reform and spiritual renewal. Intelligence work supports both survival and mission advancement while requiring sophisticated operational security. Your role in the decades following the Order's official dissolution extends beyond simple survival to encompass active influence over political, religious, and cultural developments that shape European civilization in directions that reflect Templar values and objectives. This influence must remain invisible, while achieving results that serve the greater good of Christendom and human spiritual development. Royal counselors who secretly maintain Templar identity while serving various European courts provide advice that promotes policies favorable to justice, reform, and spiritual development, while avoiding detection by authorities who continue to view former Templars with suspicion. These positions require exceptional skill in balancing loyalty to underground objectives with apparent service to secular rulers. Church reform movements benefit from anonymous support and guidance provided by former Templars, who understand the corruption and abuses that require correction. while possessing knowledge of alternative approaches to religious organization and spiritual development. Reform efforts must appear entirely independent while receiving strategic assistance from experienced underground operatives. Artistic movements receive patronage and direction that promotes themes reflecting Templar values while creating works that preserve important knowledge and spiritual insights in forms that can be appreciated by future generations. Artistic influence operates through anonymous support while achieving cultural impact that extends far beyond immediate political or religious objectives. Scholarly institutions benefit from book donations, financial support, and expert teaching provided by former Templars who continue intellectual work under assumed identities while advancing knowledge in areas that serve both practical and spiritual purposes. Academic influence creates long-term cultural impact while maintaining security necessary for protecting underground personnel. Commercial enterprises established or influenced by former Templars promote ethical business practices while generating profits that support underground activities and provide assistance to persecuted individuals throughout Europe. Business influence demonstrates alternative approaches to economic relationships while serving practical objectives related to survival and mission advancement. Military innovations developed by former Templars serving in secular armies improve defensive capabilities while introducing tactical and strategic concepts that serve Christian interests during conflicts with Muslim forces and internal European wars. Military influence continues the Order's original mission while adapting to changed circumstances and requirements. Technological development continues through anonymous contributions to engineering projects, architectural innovations, and mechanical improvements that benefit European civilization, while demonstrating the practical value of knowledge preserved by former Templars. Technological influence serves both immediate practical needs and long-term cultural advancement. Diplomatic activities conducted by former Templars serving in various official and unofficial capacities promote peaceful resolution of conflicts, while advancing policies that serve Christian unity and spiritual development. Diplomatic influence operates through established governmental channels while serving objectives that transcend national interests. Legal reform efforts receive expert assistance from former Templars who understand the injustices and procedural problems that enable persecution while possessing knowledge of alternative approaches to law and justice. Legal influence works to prevent future abuses while protecting vulnerable individuals from corrupt authorities. Your personal influence operates through relationships, mentorship, and example that affect individuals who may never know your true identity while benefiting from wisdom and guidance derived from Templar training and experience. Personal influence multiplies through networks of people who carry forward values and approaches they learned from underground Templars. Educational reform receives support and guidance that promotes approaches to learning and intellectual development that serve both practical and spiritual objectives, while creating opportunities for preserving and transmitting knowledge that authorities prefer to suppress. Educational influence shapes future generations while maintaining security necessary for continued operations. Scientific research benefits from anonymous financial support and expert consultation provided by former Templars who continue investigation of natural phenomena while adapting their work to civilian contexts that provide cover for continued scholarly activities. Scientific influence advances human knowledge while serving objectives related to understanding divine creation. Philosophical development receives contributions from former Templars who explore questions concerning the relationship between spiritual and temporal authority, individual rights, and social justice while adapting their insights to contemporary intellectual discourse. Philosophical influence shapes long-term cultural development while addressing problems that contributed to the Order's persecution. Cultural preservation efforts protect and transmit artistic, literary, and intellectual traditions that might otherwise be lost during periods of political upheaval and religious persecution, while ensuring that valuable knowledge remains available for future generations. Preservation activities serve both historical and spiritual objectives while maintaining cultural continuity. Social welfare programs receive anonymous support and expert management that provides assistance to vulnerable populations while demonstrating alternative approaches to charity and community development. Welfare activities fulfill religious obligations while creating practical demonstrations of Christian values in action. Your recognition that the underground struggle must continue beyond your own lifetime leads to careful recruitment and training of younger men who can carry forward Templar objectives while adapting to changing circumstances that require different approaches and methods. Passing the mission to a new generation becomes as important as preserving the original knowledge and values. Trompasic selection criteria for new recruits emphasize spiritual commitment and moral character, rather than noble birth or military prowess. that characterized original Templar recruitment, while ensuring that candidates possess intelligence and skills necessary for underground operations requiring discretion and adaptability. Recruitment becomes more challenging, but also more selective, as circumstances demand exceptional individuals. Training programs for new members combine traditional Templar education with skills necessary for survival and effectiveness in underground conditions, while maintaining spiritual and intellectual standards that preserve organizational identity and mission. Training must occur in secret, while achieving results that enable new members to contribute meaningfully to continued operations. Mentorship relationships pair experienced former Templars with younger recruits, while providing guidance and support necessary for adaptation to underground life and development of capabilities required for mission advancement. Mentorship creates personal bonds that substitute for the institutional structure that previously supported member development. Family traditions develop among bloodlines connected to former Templars, as knowledge, values, and mission commitment pass from fathers to sons, while maintaining secrecy necessary for protecting both individuals and organizational objectives. Family transmission creates continuity, while requiring careful security measures that prevent infiltration by hostile authorities. Your role as elder statesman within the underground organization includes responsibility for strategic planning, policy development, and decision-making that affects both immediate operations and long-term objectives, while ensuring that experience gained through decades of underground activity benefits future planning and execution. Knowledge transmission focuses on preserving and communicating technical, spiritual, and cultural information that defines Templar identity, while adapting teaching methods to underground conditions that limit opportunities for formal education and systematic instruction. Knowledge preservation becomes increasingly important as original members age and face mortality. Spiritual development continues as a lifelong process that deepens understanding and commitment, while providing meaning and purpose during difficult periods when mission advancement seems slow or impossible. Spiritual growth becomes both personal objective and organizational necessity, as underground operations require sustained motivation from members who may never see dramatic results. Operational security evolves as authorities develop new methods for detecting and infiltrating underground organizations, while requiring constant adaptation of communication methods, meeting procedures, and security protocols that protect members and mission objectives from hostile surveillance and persecution. Resource management becomes increasingly complex as underground operations require sustained funding, while avoiding detection by authorities who monitor financial transactions and investigate suspicious wealth accumulation. Financial activities must generate necessary resources while maintaining security that protects both assets and personnel from confiscation or persecution. Cultural adaptation enables underground operations to remain relevant and effective as European society undergoes changes that affect both opportunities and threats facing former Templars, while requiring modification of methods and objectives that accommodate new circumstances without abandoning fundamental mission requirements. Technological innovation continues as underground members adapt their knowledge and skills to civilian applications while maintaining capabilities that might prove useful for future operations requiring engineering, military, or scientific expertise. Innovation serves both practical and strategic objectives while creating additional income sources. International networking maintains connections with surviving Templar remnants in other countries while coordinating activities that serve common objectives despite different national contexts and security requirements. International cooperation provides mutual support while creating opportunities for resource sharing and strategic coordination. Your personal preparation for eventual succession includes identification and training of younger members who might inherit leadership responsibilities while ensuring that essential knowledge and experience transfer to individuals capable of maintaining organizational effectiveness and mission commitment after your death or incapacitation. Political analysis monitors governmental and ecclesiastical developments that affect underground operations while identifying opportunities for influence or expansion and threats that require defensive measures or tactical withdrawal. Political awareness becomes essential for survival, while serving strategic planning that advances long-term objectives. Historical documentation records underground activities and experiences while preserving information that future generations might need for understanding organizational development and mission evolution. Historical preservation serves both practical and cultural purposes while maintaining security necessary for protecting ongoing operations. You're witness to the intellectual awakening that begins to transform European culture during the 14th and 15th centuries creates opportunities for former Templars to contribute their preserved knowledge while benefiting from new discoveries and methods that enhance understanding of both natural and spiritual reality. The Renaissance becomes a cover for renewed Templar influence over European development. Humanistic scholarship benefits from anonymous contributions of classical texts, historical documents, and philosophical works preserved by the underground organization, while former Templars adopt scholarly identities that enable them to participate openly in intellectual activities that serve both personal and organizational objectives. Scholarship provides perfect cover for continued operations while serving mission advancement. Artistic patronage enables underground Templars to influence cultural development through support for painters, sculptors, and architects whose works convey spiritual and intellectual themes that reflect Templar values, while creating lasting monuments to knowledge and beauty that serve both aesthetic and educational purposes. Scientific research receives contributions from former Templars who possess knowledge derived from Islamic and Byzantine sources, while developing new approaches to investigation of natural phenomena that combine traditional spiritual insights with experimental methods that advance human understanding of divine creation. Your involvement in early banking developments utilizes financial expertise preserved from original Templar operations while adapting to new economic conditions and opportunities that enable continued resource generation for underground activities. Banking provides both income and influence while creating networks of commercial relationships that support mission objectives. Architectural projects benefit from engineering knowledge and symbolic understanding that former Templars contribute to construction of churches, public buildings, and private residences that incorporate sacred geometry and mystical symbolism while serving practical functions that benefit communities throughout Europe. Educational institutions receive support and guidance that promotes approaches to learning that serve both intellectual and spiritual development, while preserving and transmitting knowledge that authorities might prefer to suppress. Educational influence shapes future generations while maintaining security necessary for continued underground operations. Philosophical movements benefit from contributions that address questions concerning individual rights, social justice, and the relationship between spiritual and temporal authority, while adapting Templar insights to contemporary intellectual discourse that influences political and social development throughout Europe. Technological innovation continues through anonymous contributions to mechanical devices, military equipment, and engineering projects that benefit European civilization, while demonstrating practical applications of knowledge preserved by former Templars. Technological development serves both immediate needs and long-term strategic objectives. Diplomatic activities conducted through Renaissance courts provide opportunities for political influence while enabling former Templars to promote policies that serve Christian unity and spiritual development through established governmental channels that provide legitimacy and effectiveness. Your personal intellectual development deepens through exposure to Renaissance learning, while contributing specialized knowledge that enhances understanding in areas where Templar scholarship exceeds contemporary European achievements. Intellectual exchange benefits both individual growth and mission advancement, while creating valuable relationships. Cultural preservation efforts protect and transmit artistic, literary, and intellectual traditions, while adapting preservation methods to new opportunities created by Renaissance interest in classical learning and historical scholarship. Preservation activities serve both historical and strategic objectives while maintaining cultural continuity. Mystical traditions preserved by former Templars find new expression through Renaissance interest in Neoplatonism, Hermeticism, and other esoteric schools that provide cover for continued spiritual development, while creating opportunities for influence over intellectual movements that shape European culture. Commercial enterprises established or influenced by former Templars demonstrate ethical business practices while generating resources necessary for continued operations and mission advancement. Commercial success provides both practical benefits and cultural influence while serving as demonstration of alternative approaches to economic relationships. Political influence operates through carefully placed individuals who serve in various Renaissance courts while promoting policies that advance justice, reform, and spiritual development without revealing their underground connections. Political work requires exceptional discretion while achieving results that benefit both immediate objectives and long-term mission requirements. Artistic movements receive guidance and support that promotes themes reflecting spiritual and intellectual values, while creating works that preserve important knowledge in forms that can be appreciated by future generations. Artistic influence operates through anonymous patronage while achieving cultural impact that extends far beyond immediate political or religious objectives. Scholarly institutions benefit from book donations, financial support, and expert consultation provided by former Templars who continue intellectual work under assumed identities while advancing knowledge in areas that serve both practical and spiritual purposes. Academic influence creates long-term cultural impact while maintaining necessary security. The convergence of preserved Templar knowledge with Renaissance discovery creates opportunities for advancing human understanding while maintaining the spiritual and moral framework that prevents knowledge from being used for harmful purposes. This synthesis becomes a model for future development that balances intellectual advancement with spiritual wisdom. Your observation of growing dissatisfaction with church corruption and abuse provides opportunities for former Templars to influence reform movements while avoiding association with revolutionary activities that might compromise underground security or contradict organizational loyalty to authentic Christian values. The Protestant Reformation creates both opportunities and dangers that require careful navigation. Reformist movements benefit from anonymous support and guidance provided by former Templars who understand institutional problems while possessing knowledge of alternative approaches to religious organization and spiritual development. Reform efforts must appear independent while receiving strategic assistance that serves both immediate objectives and long-term mission requirements. Theological scholarship contributes to Reformation debates through anonymous publications and private consultation that addresses problems of church corruption while promoting solutions that serve authentic spiritual development rather than merely political or economic objectives. Theological influence operates through established academic channels while maintaining security. Political alliances with reform-minded nobles provide opportunities for influencing governmental policies, while protecting persecuted individuals and promoting justice through established legal and political processes. Political relationships must be developed carefully, while balancing support for legitimate reform against association with revolutionary activities. Your personal position during Reformation conflicts requires balancing loyalty to authentic Christian values against opposition to institution corruption, while avoiding identification with particular theological or political factions that might compromise security or effectiveness of underground operations. Neutrality becomes both protection and strategic advantage. Educational activities support development of reformed approaches to learning and spiritual instruction, while preserving knowledge and traditions that serve both practical and cultural objectives. Educational influence shapes future generations while maintaining traditions that might otherwise be lost during periods of religious upheaval. Cultural preservation efforts protect artistic, literary, and intellectual works from destruction during periods of religious conflict, while ensuring that valuable cultural resources remain available for future generations regardless of immediate political and theological outcomes. Preservation serves both historical and strategic objectives. Diplomatic efforts promote peaceful resolution of religious conflicts while advancing policies that serve Christian unity and spiritual development, despite theological disagreements that divide various reform movements. Diplomatic influence operates through multiple channels while maintaining flexibility necessary for adaptation to changing circumstances. Intelligence gathering monitors Reformation developments while assessing opportunities and threats created by religious and political changes that affect the safety and effectiveness of underground operations. Intelligence work supports both security and strategic planning while enabling adaptation to rapidly changing circumstances. Social welfare activities demonstrate alternative approaches to charity and community service while providing practical assistance to individuals affected by religious persecution and political upheaval. Welfare programs serve both religious obligations and strategic objectives while creating positive relationships with various communities. Technological development continues through contributions to projects that serve both immediate practical needs and long-term cultural advancement while maintaining security necessary for protecting underground personnel and operations. Technological innovation demonstrates value of preserved knowledge while generating resources for continued activities. Financial operations adapt to changing economic conditions created by Reformation conflicts while maintaining resources necessary for underground activities and mission advancement. Financial activities must generate necessary income while avoiding detection by authorities who monitor suspicious wealth accumulation during periods of political instability. Your role as strategic advisor for underground operations includes responsibility for analyzing Reformation developments while recommending policies that serve both immediate security needs and long-term mission objectives. Strategic planning must balance multiple competing priorities while maintaining organizational unity and effectiveness. Mystical traditions preserved by former Templars provide spiritual resources for individuals struggling with religious uncertainty, while offering alternative approaches to spiritual development that transcend theological controversies dividing various Christian denominations. Mystical practice serves both personal and organizational needs while maintaining spiritual continuity. Philosophical contributions address questions concerning individual conscience, religious authority, and social justice, while adapting insights to contemporary intellectual discourse that influences both religious and political development. Philosophical influence shapes long-term cultural development while serving immediate mission objectives. The Reformation's emphasis on individual spiritual relationship with God creates opportunities for former Templars to promote authentic spiritual development while maintaining organization, identity, and mission commitment, despite loss of institutional framework that previously provided structure and support. Your awareness of European expansion into new continents creates unprecedented opportunities for former Templars to influence the development of new societies while escaping the surveillance and restrictions that limit underground operations in Europe. The age of exploration offers possibilities for mission advancement that could not be achieved within traditional geographical boundaries. Colonial ventures provide cover for former Templars, seeking to establish new lives, while continuing organizational objectives through participation in settlements that require experienced leadership and diverse skills. Colonial service offers both escape from persecution and opportunities for implementing Templar values in new social and political contexts. Missionary activities enable former Templars to serve Christian evangelization while utilizing linguistic, cultural, and diplomatic skills developed through previous contact with non-Christian peoples. Missionary work provides legitimate religious occupation while creating opportunities for cultural exchange and knowledge preservation that serve broader objectives. Trading expeditions utilize commercial expertise and international connections while providing cover for intelligence gathering and cultural investigation that benefits both immediate operational needs and long-term strategic planning. Commercial activity generates resources while creating relationships that support mission advancement. Your personal involvement in exploration activities combines adventure with service while utilizing skills and knowledge that distinguish former Templars from ordinary colonists and traders. Exploration provides opportunities for personal growth and mission advancement while serving the broader development of human knowledge and civilization. Scientific investigation benefits from preserved knowledge and systematic approaches developed through centuries of Templar scholarship, while contributing to geographic, botanical, and anthropological understanding that advances human knowledge of divine creation. Scientific work serves both practical and spiritual objectives, while creating valuable contributions to European learning. Diplomatic relationships with indigenous peoples utilize cultural sensitivity and negotiation skills developed through previous contact with diverse populations while promoting just treatment and mutual respect that reflects Christian values. Diplomatic work serves both practical colonial needs and moral obligations while creating positive relationships. Technological adaptation applies engineering and mechanical knowledge to new environmental conditions while developing innovations that serve both colonial development and mission advancement. Technological work demonstrates practical value of preserved knowledge while generating resources and influence that support organizational objectives. Educational institutions established in new territories provide opportunities for implementing approaches to learning that serve both intellectual and spiritual development, while preserving and transmitting knowledge that authorities might suppress in European contexts. Educational work shapes future generations while maintaining cultural continuity. Economic development utilizes financial expertise and ethical business practices while creating sustainable prosperity that benefits both colonial communities and indigenous populations. Economic activity demonstrates alternative approaches to wealth creation while generating resources that support mission advancement and community welfare. Cultural preservation efforts protect and study indigenous knowledge, traditions, and practices while ensuring that valuable cultural resources are not lost during periods of rapid social change. Preservation activities serve both historical and strategic objectives while promoting mutual respect and understanding between different peoples. Military service in colonial conflicts utilizes tactical and strategic knowledge while promoting approaches to warfare that minimize unnecessary destruction and protect civilian populations. Military influence continues original Templar mission while adapting to new contexts and requirements that serve Christian civilization's expansion. Administrative positions in colonial governments provide opportunities for implementing policies that serve justice, development, and spiritual welfare, while demonstrating alternative approaches to governance that reflect Templar values and experience. Administrative influence shapes colonial development while serving both immediate and long-term objectives. Intelligence networks established in new territories provide information about political, economic, and cultural developments while creating communication channels that connect colonial operations with underground activities in Europe. Intelligence work supports both security and strategic coordination while enabling global perspective on mission development. Your role in establishing new Templar influence communities creates opportunities for implementing organizational principles and values while adapting to circumstances that differ substantially from European contexts. Community development serves both practical and spiritual objectives while providing models for future expansion and influence. Religious activities maintain spiritual observances and mystical practices while adapting to new cultural contexts and opportunities that enable continued spiritual development despite geographical separation from traditional centers of learning and worship. Religious practice serves both personal and organizational needs while maintaining spiritual continuity across global operations. The global perspective gained through colonial involvement transforms understanding of Templar mission while creating opportunities for influence and development that transcend European geographical and political limitations. Global awareness enables strategic planning that serves both immediate needs and long-term objectives that could not be achieved within traditional boundaries. The integration of colonial experiences with preserved European knowledge creates new synthesis of understanding that advances both practical capabilities and spiritual development while serving the ultimate objective of promoting human welfare and spiritual advancement throughout the expanding realm of Christian civilization. As the sun sets on another day in this new world, whether you stand on the shores of unknown continents or walk the familiar stones of European cities, you carry within yourself the continuity of an ideal that has survived persecution, transformation, and adaptation across centuries of challenge and change. The white mantle may be gone, but the red cross burns as brightly as ever in hearts that have chosen to serve something greater than themselves, something that transcends the limitations of time, geography, and the temporary victories of those who mistake power for righteousness. The Templar mission continues, not as it began, but as it has evolved through the forge of history into something both more humble and more enduring than any earthly kingdom or institutional authority.